Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Jamuna Tira Vanam Sari Jamuna Tira Vanam Sari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radha Vishupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakachajasto Tarasatta Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Sirabai Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Kandi Biti Founder Chariots Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Samabhata Bhakti Vrinda Ki Harinam Sankirtan Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Dainitai Gaura Premanande. All glories to be assembled devotees, all glories to be assembled devotees, all glories to be assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and to Sri Gauranga, all glories to Sri Prabhupada Ki. Sunday. Today is
I missed last week.
Yes, we won't. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Taksurambilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaisnavam Scha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Dalita Sri Visakhanditam Scha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kancana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Vansakalpa Tarubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Dyaevacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Narayanam Namaskritya Saram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, let us first offer respectful obeisances unto Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayana Rishi, the supremmost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Prayasabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Tamasloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. By regularly hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering a service unto the pure devotee, all that is troublesome within the heart becomes destroyed or practically to nil. And loving devotional service unto the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, it becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahma Samhitam Uttama Shloka Charitam Chakara Bhagavan Rishi Nishreyasaya Lokasya Dhanyam Swasyayanam Mahat. The Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Grantaraj, the king of all Vedic literatures, is the literary incarnation of God. It is compiled by the incarnation of God as Srila Vyasadeva. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people. It is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Sarabhyai Namaha Om Sarabhyai Namaha Om Sarabhyai Namaha Vachalam Pangum Lankayate Girim Sri Gurum Dinataranam Atmaham Bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone to our morning Srimad Bhagavatam class, continuing from Canto number 1. Canto number 1, chapter 8. Can't see properly without glasses. And yes, today we are doing text number 46. 46, yes. 46. Mm. Vyasadhyair Ishvare Haj Ishvare Hajnai Krishnena Bhuta Karmana Prabodhito Pitihasair Nabhudyata Sucharpitaha Vyasadhyar Ishvare Hajnai Krishnenad Bhuta Karmana Prabodhito Piti Hasair Nabudyata Sucharpitaha Vyasadhyar Ishvare Hajnai Krishnenad Bhuta Karmana Prabodhito Piti Hasaira Nabudyata Sucharpitaha Vyasadhyar Ishvare Hajnai Krishnenad Bhutta Karmana Prabodhito Piti Hasaira Nabudyata Sucharpitaha Vyasadhyar Ishvare Hajnai Krishnenadbhutakarmana Prabodhito Pitihasayar Nabhudyata Sucharpita Vyasadhyayar Ishvare Hajnai Krishnenadbhutakarmana Prabodhito Pitihasayar Nabhudyata Sucharpitaha Vyasadhyayarishvare hajnai Krishnenadbhutakarmana Prabodhito Pitihasayar Nabhudyata Sucharpitaha. Ladies. Vyasadhyayarishvare hajnai Krishnenadbhutakarmana Prabodhito Pitihasayar Nabhudyata Sucharpitaha Vyasa Adhyay by great sages headed by Vyasa, Ishvara, the Almighty God, Iha, by the will of, Gnai, by the learned, Krishnena, by Krishna himself, Adbhuta Karmana, by one who performs all superhuman work. Prabodhitaha, being solaced, api, although, itihasai, by evidences from the histories, na, not, abhudyata, satisfied, shucha arpitaha, distressed. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. There it is. King Yudhishthira, who was much aggrieved, could not be convinced, despite instructions by great sages headed by Vyasa and the Lord himself, and the Lord Krishna himself, the performer of superhuman feats, and despite all historical evidence. Kindly repeat after me. King Yudhishthira, who was much aggrieved, could not be convinced, despite instructions by great sages headed by Vyasa and the Lord Krishna himself, the performer of superhuman feats, and despite all historical evidence. Purport. The pious King Yudhishthira was mortified because of the mass massacre of human beings in the battle of Kurukshetra, especially on his account. Duryodhana was there on the throne, and he was doing well in his administration, and in one sense there was no need for fighting. But on the principle of justice, Yudhishthira was to replace him. The whole clique of politics centered around this point, and all the kings and residents of the whole world became involved in this fight between the rival brothers. Lord Krishna was also there on the side of King Yudhishthira. It is said in the Mahabharata, Adiparva 20, God, that 640 million men were killed in the 18 days of the Battle of Kurukshetra, and hundreds of thousands were missing. Practically, this was the greatest battle in the world within 5,000 years. I was asking the other day how many were actually killed. 640 million. That's how many times the population of Canada. Population of Canada is used to be about 30 million, 35 million.
Really?
Yeah, nothing.
It's inconceivable.
Prabhupada continues here in the purport. This mass killing simply to enthrone Maharaj Yudhishthira was too mortifying. So he tried to be convinced with evidences from histories by great sages like Vyasa and the Lord himself that the fight was just because the cause was just. But Maharaj Yudhishthira would not be satisfied, even though he was instructed by the greatest personalities of the time. Krishna is designated herein as the performer of superhuman actions. But in this particular instance, neither he nor Vyasa could convince King Yudhishthira. Does it mean that he failed to be a Does it mean that he failed to be a superhuman actor? No, certainly not. The interpretation is that the Lord is Ishvara, or the super soul in the hearts of both King Yudhishthira and Vyasa. The interpretation is that the Lord as Ishvara, or the super soul in the hearts of both King Yudhishthira and Vyasa, performed still more superhuman action because the Lord desired it. As super soul of King Yudhishthira, he did not allow the king to be convinced by the words of Vyasa and others, including himself, because he desired that the king hear instructions from the dying Bhishmadev, who was another great devotee of the Lord. The Lord wanted that at the last stage of his material existence, the great warrior Bhishmadev see him personally and see his beloved grandchildren, King Yudhishthira, etc., now situated on the throne, and thus pass away very peacefully. Bhishmadev was not at all satisfied to fight against the Pandavas, who were his beloved fatherless grandchildren. But the Kshatriyas are also very stern people, and therefore he was obliged to take the side of Duryodhana because he was maintained at the expense of Duryodhana. Besides this, the Lord also desired that King Yudhishthira be pacified by the words of Bhishmadev, so that the world could see that Bhishma Dev excelled in all knowledge, including the Lord himself. Haribol. Translation again. King Yudhishthira was such was much aggrieved. King Yudhishthira, who was much aggrieved, could not be convinced, despite instructions by great sages, headed by Vyasa and the Lord Krishna himself, the performer of superhuman feats, and despite all historical evidence. Um, so we were mentioning yesterday or the day before how these prayers offered by Queen Kunti Devi uh, and subsequently the Lord's imminent departure to leave Hastinapur and return to Dwarka is somehow a prelude to the next Leela, which is actually elaborately described in the next chapter, which is the passing of Grandfather Bhishmadev. And Srila Prabhupada at the end of this chapter, prayers of Queen Kunti, is kind of introducing or preparing us gradually because the Lord was about to leave after hearing the wonderful heartfelt prayers expressed by Queen Kunti Devi. The Lord was very pleased to hear her words and then was taking permission to leave, was uh, going to Hastinapur to get to say farewell to the ladies in Hastinapur, and that's when Yudhishthira Maharaj um, humbly requested the Lord to stay a little longer. And of course, we were discussing this point, how, uh, yes, how could the Lord leave? Because although the battle of Kurukshetra was finished, Grandfather Bhishmadev was still lying on his bed of arrows. So it's, of course, inconceivable that Krishna would leave without something happening in that respect. Um, and and therefore, uh, Yudhishthira Maharaj is is yeah, we cannot imagine the numbers. I mean, how many people were killed in World War One? Anyone studies recent history? World War One, World War Two. I mean, definitely not 640
I don't
million.
know,
Yeah, right. I also don't know offhand.
but it was a lot.
Huh?
It was a huge number.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially, I think World War One was more even.
Was more possibly, yeah. Uh, getting cooled down here. So, Yudhishthira Maharaj was feeling that way actually, especially because a devotee is uh, extremely, what is it, sensitive, is very, uh, is very much aware, it meant to be very much uh, concerned about any kind of suffering inflicted upon any living entity, not only human beings. And here, especially in this context, because he was feeling that all of this just to enthrone me, just to have me take that position. And therefore, uh, so he was expressing these very deep feelings of the word here. The word mortified is quite strong. It means like, shattered. You know, we have different situations in life where our morale becomes practically shattered, some major catastrophe. This was like catastrophe. I mean, some people question whether this Battle of Kurukshetra actually happened.
Because there were so many people who died.
Well, because there's kind of like really far out things that are in connection with the Battle of Kurukshetra, like people from all over the world, all over the world, it says were participating. And then, and then, you know, ordinary people will say that, how is that possible? It was a local battle. It was, just at one place. How can 640 million people assemble in one place? Well, we should think about it because in India, actually, unless somebody comes to India, there's many, many things one cannot understand. It's like when I went to the Kumbh Mela many years ago, my first Kumbh Mela, it was like, wow, you have in one place, I mean, one place, not like a small place, it's like huge. That's why Kurukshetra was chosen as the battlefield because it's a huge place. So when I went to the Kumbh Mela, I mean, I had never seen so many people at one place at one time,
Yeah.
doing all kinds of things, including having to go to the bathroom. You know, so it's like Kumbh Melas have up to 25 million people. So uh,
1 day into 12. 1 day into 12 days into 25 million.
for a place like India, having large numbers of people come together for like festivals like Kumbh Mela or other purposes is like not uncommon and not unusual. It's like people who've never been to India, especially if they come from a less populated country like Canada, for example. From 30 million in the whole country. Here in every state of India, you have like, I don't know, close to 100 million, possibly.
145 million.
What's the population of
India.
Andhra or
Andhra,
Telangana?
Andhra is about 7 million.
7? No.
No, sorry.
Anyway, this huge population. Huge population. I mean, so, um, I mean, we can. They make, for example, I mean, Kumbh Mela is like a typical example of really large gathering, and over the years, governments have had to intervene to kind of make arrangements for the well-being and the security, because in Kumbh Melas they bring in elephants, and sometimes elephants don't always listen to you. And stampedes and whatnot. I mean, many people have died in different Kumbh Melas because of so much of rush. I mean, even just recently in India, somewhere in one of the states, some big festival, And then, when you have a lot of people and for some reason somebody panics and people start rushing, and then, you create what you call a stampede, everything becomes out of control, and people just get trampled on and die, you know. So, um, so this was the mood and mentality of uh, naturally of of Yudhishthira Maharaj, and that mood and mentality he exhibited because he was uh, such an exalted personality. And here it mentions, I mean, how he could not be convinced. That will be further elaborated upon in the next chapter, but Prabhupada is making reference right here. Could not be convinced by great personalities like Srila Vyasadeva and even Krishna himself, which is rather inconceivable. Uh, but Prabhupada makes the point that actually Krishna, uh, he allows sometimes himself to be even defeated. He allows himself not to be convinced uh, for some other purpose, which of course was ultimately to to glorify his devotee. So many different reasons that will be nicely brought up actually in the next chapter. And I mean, we were discussing also, I mean, how long did Yudhishthira Maharaj, or rather Bhishmadev, how long was he on his bed of arrows? We calculated kind of roughly about 2 months, right?
2 months.
Yeah, because Bhagavad Gita was spoken in the month of December. And purposely, Bhishmadev was purposely waiting for the opportune time, which comes every year, what is called Uttarayana. Uttarayana falls on the 15th of February every year. It's a big festival in India. That's when the sun starts to go in the northern direction.
There's a cow right now in the sanctuary.
Ah,
Her name is Tulsi. She's
okay.
very old.
A name, yes.
Yeah, she's been with Dhammakunda,
Right.
a long, long time. She's been leaving her body now for 2 months.
Since the last 2 months, she's in the process of leaving her body.
She's not. Usually, when a cow doesn't get up,
Oh, yeah,
they don't last very long.
correct. Yeah,
She's still there.
okay. Last
She's
2 months.
still there.
Right.
Something amazing is happening.
Right. Well, yeah. So you are, when thinking about Bhishma Dev lying on his bed of arrows, you're thinking 2 months. Okay, 2 months, right. Yes. Yudhishthira Maharaj on his bed of arrows for 2 months, and this cow, usually cows actually, it's a fact, when they don't get up, they cannot live for a long time. Yeah, they cannot digest, and also unless they are very gently moved and they develop sores and whatnot.
She's very gently moved all the time.
Yeah. But I'm saying even, yeah, still, right.
Her, their organs don't function properly.
Yeah, correct.
When they're down.
Yes, yes,
Like that.
correct. Because they're meant to be either standing or sitting in a particular position, right? I mean, very rarely.
Huh? They can lay down for a little bit.
Yeah. But I mean, sometimes you see cows, in ecstasy, just lying down. Really, I've seen that. I mean, we had in our village in Indonesia, Gita Nagari, Baru, we had some young calves actually, and we had some go puja. They have regularly actually, and we have so many children there. And anyways, they started playing with the cows, and the cows were they were massaging the cows, and the cows were starting to, wow, this is real nice. And they became very relaxed. When a cow is relaxed, a cow is really relaxed. Yeah. It just lies down, stretches out, and it's like, yeah. So So naturally, this whole pastime that is we are being prepared for this pastime of Bhishma Dev. Actually, this is a very important section of the Mahabharata, which is in yeah um, in wanting to teach, for example, in wanting to prepare the curriculum, which Prabhupada told us to prepare curriculum for training and educating brahmanas, and the curriculum for training and educating kshatriyas. Well, the instructions of Grandfather Bhishma Dev contain a lot of, because he speaks quite extensively about varnashrama. He speaks about, because he's a kshatriya and he's speaking to another kshatriya. What do kshatriyas talk about? They don't talk about Rasa Leela. You know, I mean, I was reading some years back some section in the Mahabharata where it describes that during the last year that the Pandavas were in incognito. The last year they had to find they could not be recognized, and nobody was supposed to know where they were. So they took shelter of King Virat.
Yeah.
Virata. King Virata's kingdom actually was part of Orissa, part of what is Orissa today. Yeah, uh, that's a whole other thing. But so they, as we know, they one by one, anyone, that was the system before. If you want to be sheltered, you would approach a king or a kingdom, and somehow you would take up some kind of role or responsibility, and you would be protected and sheltered by that king. So that's what they did, each one of them, and they took on, as we know, a particular role, isn't it? Yudhisthira was uh, playing dice with King Virat, uh, um, trying to catch up on, and then Bhima was the cook. Arjuna was a singer and dancer.
He was a eunuch.
Yeah. Well, only as a eunuch could he teach.
Right.
Yeah, his daughter. I mean, Virata's daughter. Uh, and then Sahadev and Nakula. Nakula was looking after horses, and Sahadev was looking after cows, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought they were both looking after cows.
No.
Horses one and horse.
Yeah, one of the horses.
One was, yeah. Bec- because when the time came, now I'm going to forget what I want to say. So so they were there for some time, for a whole year practically. And King Virata, he would, uh, and of course, Draupadi was also there as like a maidservant, and she had purpose.
Hairdresser.
Huh?
Hairdresser to.
Hairdresser.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's one of the
maidservants do all kinds of things, and she was covering her face, so as not to be recognized, and also because, anyways. So after some time, King Virata, he was, who are these people, because they were very expert in doing their service, Yudhisthira Maharaj, and then and Bhima, he was rightfully situated in the kitchen. So after some time, he requested one of his servants or somebody, because they were staying together. Every day they would have their different services, then they would stay together. Yeah, King Virata had arranged some place for them. So he sent one of his men, go and find out, try to find out a bit.
They were too good.
Yeah, yeah. So in secret, he sent this one person. In the Vedic culture, actually in Kshatriyahood, spying is an important part of it, right? Anyways, so he goes there, and then very slowly, it's like late at night, and he's trying to kind of like know something about them. So he's hearing and spending about an hour or 2 hours, just hearing what they're saying. Then he goes back to the palace and he reports to King Virata. So King Virata is anxious to know. So, what did you find out? He says, I really had a hard time understanding what they were discussing. They were just talking about all kinds of different weapons and different types of, positions in war and this and that. I couldn't understand anything. So I'm just saying, Kshatriyas, they talk about Kshatriya topics. They were talking about, about how to get ready for the battle of Kurukshetra, basically. So, so Bhishma Dev, it's very extensive, very, very long, this whole Leela of him instructing, but that was the purpose, one of the purposes why Krishna created this whole situation. And so we're at the tail end of this chapter here, where Yudhishthira Maharaj is uh, expressing his deep moroseness, um, and yeah, basically preparing for what will be upcoming. I think there's only about, well, actually there's still quite a few, maybe about 10 more verses, 46.
6 more are there.
Yeah, there's 6 more verses. So let me just read this again. Not the purport, the translation. King Yudhishthira, who was much aggrieved, could not be convinced, despite instructions by great sages headed by Vyasa and the Lord himself, the performer of superhuman feats, and despite all historical evidence. Yeah. And then actually, yeah, this is just like Yudhishthira Maharaj in the next few verses will actually, from in the next 5 verses will be speaking to Krishna and giving his reasons for being morose.
Here, World War II was more deadly and widespread than World War I, which had around 8.5 million military
World War II was more deadly.
Deadly and widespread than World War I,
Okay.
which had around 8.5 million military fatalities, which over 16 million military fatalities
Huh?
and 16 million
16 million.
military fatalities and an estimated 70 to 85 million overall casualties.
72.
85 million.
Huh?
70 between 85 million.
Between 70 and 85.
Yeah.
Casualties.
Casualties, including civilians, were
of
killed.
casualties, that is not dying. Anyways,
The
much.
average 4 years, and it's 18 days. So,
That's true.
Right,
so when
correct.
you go to the Rath Yatra Puri, then 1 or 2 million people comes together.
Yeah,
And if after Rath Yatra they all die, so sorry to say, but that's the sin.
right.
So they are together because some very nice, intelligent person organized them. The logistic is the most difficult, as you say.
Absolutely. Yes,
But yeah, so that's really not easy to conceive.
yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They have logic, not all fighting all together.
Correct.
There are some this distance are waiting.
Yeah, yeah. It's like when,
Camps are here, camps are there.
yes, when Abhimanyu, for example, when that whole incident of Abhimanyu, uh, Arjuna was fighting in some far away other place,
Yeah,
maybe like 10 kilometers away.
yeah.
So it's not, people think, how can there be, so many million people? Well, it's spread out over like so many kilometers. and I have no idea how they were coordinating without, you know, what, to coordinate such a large, huge number. They must have had runners, horses and this and that, because, of course, we read in about Mahabharata how every day there were different formations which had different names, and sometimes the shape of a snake or the shape of a whatever, different animals who have, and then you had to counteract with another formation and whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, the main point is that they are very well organized because every king, they are organizing their own
Yes.
truth, and then they just have to communicate to the main person of that army,
Yes.
and then they spread
Correct.
on their way. So they are expert to keep one group
Yes.
together,
Yes.
and
Yes.
then the groups over just one general for 10
Yes.
groups like that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
they're very clever too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why in in the army you do what you're told. You do what you're told,
You do what you're told.
isn't it? Yeah.
That's the most important.
Well, it's
Otherwise, you are really risking others.
right. Correct. You know. So I mean, you have full faith in your commander in chief.
Yeah,
That's why he's in that position of commander in chief. He's meant to command,
yeah,
and as a soldier, you're meant to follow that command. Yeah. So this whole, see, this is in democracy. This is forgotten.
Mm.
yeah.
This is much more. You can't have that in democracy.
And that's a good question. How we have to learn that kind of organization that you say, I don't follow him because he did such a thing, such a thing. No, it's not like that.
Right.
We have to accept, of course, we don't need to depend spiritually on that person, like temple president,
Right.
but we have to accept.
Yes.
If you join,
Correct.
that's it.
Yes. Yes.
And but the other side, this kind of organization have to protect the individuals also according to their needs.
Right. Right.
That's because these days leaders don't, there's no principles being followed.
That's because
There's
today.
no,
Yeah. That's
practically
yeah.
speaking,
Leaders in
there's no,
bracket.
they're not leaders.
They're
Yeah,
not.
they're
They're not
disappointed
leaders.
persons. They don't know, they don't have
Right.
the nature,
Yeah.
so
They've not been trained. They don't know the basic principles,
yeah.
and therefore we
And
have what.
their characters,
Yes. Yes.
mostly.
Yes.
mostly.
Correct. Because in the Vedic culture, most important aspect is character.
Yes.
Character formation, right? That's what Gurukul is all about. Character formation.
I don't think I'm going to have time to ask a question.
Do.
Okay, maybe
Please
I
do.
shall hold off for now. I still am bewildered about how is it that the Battle of Kurukshetra was fought on the principle of, of justice. Duryodhana was actually not a bad ruler. of his kingdom.
No, I
What
think you're
was
becoming
the
very
whole
influenced by Prabhupada's purport here.
Yes, I've often thought about this. He was not a bad ruler, but still, it had to be fought based on their principles.
He
And
was
yet
not.
Bhishma Dev, who was so principled, who was so, he took this vow of brahmacharya for his entire life, never broke it, never dreamed of breaking it.
Yes, and he
And yet,
ended up fighting against the Pandavas.
on the side of Duryodhana.
No, but if you say that Duryodhana externally might have been some kind of a good administrator, but how many times did he try to kill the Pandavas?
Right,
That's
Yes,
true.
so why was Bhishma Dev based on that what principle?
Ah,
Bhishma Dev.
because
He knew that.
because you're not a kshatriya.
I'm not a Kshatriya.
You're not a kshatriya.
Okay.
No, I'm saying
Yes.
I'm also not a kshatriya. Don't feel too bad. Because kshatriyas, Prabhupada makes that point actually in the purport, they are very strong on principles. And he was depending on Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana. He was serving under them.
Right.
So the principle of service, the principle of, it's like, in many ways, it's a cultural kind of thing. I'm being maintained, so I have to be loyal. It's a question of loyalty. Loyalty. Of course, it's in one sense debatable because dharma also is there. No, I mean the battle of Kurukshetra was fought on principles of dharma. But the principle of Prabhupada makes this point, how Kshatriyas especially display this mood or mentality of being very, very loyal. They have to be very loyal to the person under whom they are serving, which is
And Krishna never asked him not to fight. If Krishna would ask him not to fight, he would reject. Because he knew Krishna is the Supreme Personal Godhead, but Krishna never asked him. Krishna was present, so he was also accepting, okay, that's Krishna's will.
yes,
Like
Bhishma
Krishna
Dev was actually very pleased after the battle that Yudhisthira was enthroned. He knew this was the right
yes,
thing.
yes, of course, yes,
That is,
yes. I mean,
even though he had to be loyal, he still knew that
of course,
the right thing was for Yudhisthira
yes,
to be
yes.
enthroned.
And Duryodhana was accusing him. You're not fighting to your capacity,
That's true.
isn't it?
Mhm.
Come on, you're on our side. You're supposed to fight according. That's when Bhishma Dev took that promise, that vow. Okay, 5 arrows, but those 5 arrows disappeared. But yes, I mean it can we can't imagine the kind of emotions that must have been there, because like Arjuna, he when one receives instructions from Guru, I mean Dronacharya was his Guru.
Mm.
He spent many years with him. When he in the Mahabharata movie, I saw it quite some time back. It shows how Arjuna, when Dronacharya came on the scene, and Arjuna, he was still a young boy, uh, he was so he admired so much Dronacharya, who had all of these abilities as a kshatriya, and he became his best student. isn't it? And Dronacharya was always very, very kind to him and very, you know, favoring him actually over his own son, Ashwatthama. So, in other words, there was that deep feeling of love and respect and adoration and gratitude and whatnot, but he had to fight against him.
It's inconceivable, isn't it?
It is.
Dronacharya should have a son like Ashwatthama.
Yes. Yes.
This has to be Krishna's arrangement. Ultimately,
Yes. There are many inconceivable things that. Yes.
that's ultimately what it comes down to.
Um,
So in that understanding, all these apparent dualities are.
yes.
I need to hear that over and over again. I do.
Don't we all?
Yes.
Don't we all? Yes.
You know,
Everything.
there
Yes.
are pure devotees or the Supreme Person who have sons who become demons. Like Narakasura is the son of Krishna, and he's fighting against his father. So,
Vritrasura.
yeah, the
Is a
biggest
demon who is a great devotee. I love the prayers of Vitrasura because he
Yeah.
was wonderful, amazing prayers.
Yes.
He had
Yes.
no arms left, and Indra didn't want to kill him. He didn't want to kill him. He said, "Do your duty, do it." Why are you hesitating?
Correct.
He was chastising him.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Quite amazing. Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Yeah.
Jai
Jai.
Sri Prabhupada ki
Yeah.
Gaur Pimanandi. Did you come with an umbrella?
Pardon?
Did you come with an umbrella?
Yeah.
I didn't.
You did, huh? Okay. Very good.
I saw that it may develop.
No, it started.
Yeah. Now it's time to move.